everybody. We're going to start the next chapter of math. I just want to say you guys have been doing a great job. It's not easy just having a couple-minute video and then being expected to go and do the work. You're really doing a good job. You're really working hard, and we're very proud of you. We're going to be moving on now to decimals. Decimals are kind of related to fractions. Anytime you write a fraction, you could also write that as a decimal. It's that decimal point. We talked about with place value, you have the ones place, the tens place, the hundredths, so on and so forth. To the right of that decimal point, you have two more, actually more than two, but we're going to start with two, place values that show decimals. So we're going to come over here. We're going to start off very easy like we do, and then we're going to move on to some tougher stuff. But the place value right to the right of the decimal is called the tenths place. And then 1 over is called the hundredth place. So the way you can look at it is you think tenth place over 10, 100th place over 100. So your denominator would be 10 or your denominator would be 100. So if you have if you were going to do the number line from 0 to 1, remember a fraction is a part of a whole, greater than 0 but less than 1. A decimal is a part of a whole, greater than 0, less than 1. So if you have your fractions 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, and so on and so forth, until you get to 10/10, which would be 1, you can write that as decimals. 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, so on and so forth, till you get to 1 whole. So that first number next to the decimal point is over 10. If it's 0.1, you can look at that as 1 over 10. If it's 0.2, you can look at that as 2 over 10. So what you're going to be doing first is changing fractions from decimals to fractions and changing fractions from fractions to decimals. If you have two numbers after the decimal point, let's say you have 0.25, that is over 100. That is the same thing as 25 over 100. So we're going to leave it there, and then as we move on through the week and maybe next week, we're going to be doing things like adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, fractions, and we're also going to be talking about money, because when you have two places over from the decimal point, you can talk about dollars and cents, but we'll get there. But what you need to know now is that if you're given a fraction, you have to make the denominator 10, or you have to make the denominator 100. If you have 0.4, you can look at that as 4 over 10. And you can always add a 0, which would make it 40 over 100. And we know that 4/10 is equivalent to 40 over 100ths. So if we give you a fraction out of 10, you know how to write it as a decimal. If we give you a fraction out of 100, you know how to write that as a decimal. If you get, say, a fraction over 5, what you need to do is make that a fraction over 10. And you do that by making equivalent fractions. We've done this before. If you multiply or divide the top and the bottom by the same thing, in this case 2, you will get a fraction that is 5 times 2 is 10, 2 times 2 is 4. And if you were going to make that a decimal, it would be 0.4. So there will be more lessons about decimals coming up. We're going to talk about, again, money and doing some operations. It's not that different from doing operations with whole numbers. Remember, if you have a mixed number of, let's say, 2 and 1/10, that's the same thing as saying 2.1. So that's where we're going to leave you today. You're going to just do some converting from decimals to fractions, and then we'll move on as the week goes on. So keep on doing a great job. We will see you through the week.